Thank you all for joining us for the conference with Zolf Masters from Masters Marketing. On the phone with us today is, as I mentioned, Zolf Masters and Kathy Kinnett from PPMD. I'm Pat Furlong from PPMD as well. And first of all, we wanted to start off and say we're really thankful for Zolf to come on board and have this webinar today. As many of you on the phone know, Zolf has been helping us access the Glascourt, helping our community access the Glascourt for many, many years. And now things are transitioning away. So we have certainly enjoyed the relationship with Zolf and thankful for access. And today, Zolf is going to give an overview of the transition process and Masters work in that area. And then we're going to just ask some questions. So I'll be starting off as I did, and then Kathy Kinnett is going to be asking the questions. So with that, Zolf, I'd like you to take over.
Thank you very much, Pat. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining in. I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview of what our company is all about and who we are and how we are connected with the PPMD community, and then move on to how the Deflazacort program is going to move across to Marathon. So just as a background, we are a first company, way back in 1984, we were the first company to actually recognize and understand international named patient supplies. This actually means looking after individual patients, in many instances in remote parts of the world. And what we do is we provide a service where patients can have access to medication that is otherwise not available locally, and not available locally being the operative word. Starting over 30 years ago, today we look after patients in over 90 different countries. And all of this is done within the boundaries of very, very strict regulatory compliance. Now, Masters, you could go next slide. So, the named patient supplies or personal importation in the USA started back in 1954, but it was a very loose program at that time. And in 1988, the FDA actually issued a pilot program because of the AIDS issues around the world. And FDA was slow to register AIDS products. And in 1988, FDA issued a pilot program to say that patients in the USA can individually import personal importations for up to 90 days of usage. So we started with the American patients way back in 1990 in supplying various kinds of products that were not available in the USA. And then in 1999, we came across the muscular dystrophy community, Duchenne's muscular dystrophy community. So our relationship with PPMD and the muscular dystrophy community goes back well over 17 years. And I personally have been privileged to have actually attended one of your conferences and met some of you at one of these conferences. And myself and my family are very, very dear. This program or this problem is a very dear problem to us and as personally and to my family. We will continue forever and a day to support the Duchenne's muscular dystrophy community in every which way, and it will be way beyond Deflazacort. But the U.S. importation program, it's in the next slide. The U.S. importation program, there's a lot of, we're going to give you jargon in a few minutes and about the slides, but the operative word here is that only medication which is not available in the U.S. can be imported for personal use. Once the medication becomes available, and in this instance, Deflazacort is earmarked for registration by the FDA in February of next year. Once that happens, we are precluded and prohibited from sending this medication to the U.S. And therefore, the personal importation program will stop once every single Walgreens pharmacy and CVS pharmacy in the country has got Deflazacort on their shelves. So just go to continue. What we've done is Marathon Pharmaceuticals or Marathon Pharmaceuticals LLC came to us to do a partnership program where because they knew that this is a very sensitive area, and they want to make sure, as well as us, that nobody actually suffers in any way, which way, with the lack of medication available. So then we started talking to them way back in June of last year, and so we've slowly nurtured the relationship with them, and they have appreciated the fact that we actually look after some very important patients in the U.S. Next one. So I'm going to ask Heather. Heather Gamble has been very instrumental in talking to Marathon in how we make this transition from us to them to look after the patients in the U.S. And so she's just going to give you a quick chat on that.
Okay. As Zulf was saying, one thing that Marathon are very keen to ensure is that patients who are currently on Masters deflazacort continue to receive medication up to the point that their product is registered in the US and available in the US. As Zulf said, they're expecting registration to be confirmed in February of next year, but they recognise the fact that Masters has been providing this service, this personal importation service, to the Duchenne community in the US for a number of years. And as you may or may not appreciate, information on the disease, for them to try and purchase that sort of information would be very difficult for them. But we've obviously had the benefit of having tremendous insight into the patient community within the US and also the needs of that community. So they approached us wanting some information, and I'd like to reassure you before I go any further that the information that we provided to them has been blinded information such that they can't identify patients, etc. But what it has given them is it's given them, if you like, a full overview of the Duchenne community in the US in terms of the locations of the patients, the dosage form and strength of medication that the patients are taking, and the number and the location of the Masters physicians, because obviously we've got close links with the physicians as well. And Marathon will use that information in two ways. They will use it in order to inform their own strategy with regard to the registration of the product and the availability of the product, and also which physicians that they should be calling upon to talk about their product, but also to ensure that they have the right supply chain infrastructure in place to ensure that the medication is in those locations geographically where it needs to be. So you will have received communication from us. We initially wrote to Pat at PPMD to explain about these changes, although we were aware at the time that Pat and a number of others within the PPMD community were very much aware of Marathon's intentions to register their own deflazacort. We wrote to the physicians. We wrote to the physicians that are Masters physicians or physicians that we're aware of that are not involved in Marathon's expanded access program. And also we wrote to those physicians who are Masters physicians but are participating in Marathon's expanded access program. We then subsequently wrote to the patient community, and you should have received a letter from us, and there were two letters that went out. One for those patients whose physician is involved in the EAP program, and one for those patients whose physician is not involved in the EAP program. And the idea behind those two communications was to bring you as up to date as possible with regard to the new drug applications, and also to advise you of the various plans and programs that Marathon are putting in place to ensure continuity of supply. So we've taken those steps in order to ensure, as far as is possible, a smooth transition from Masters medication to Marathon's medication. And whilst we can't be absolutely precise about timings, we have got an agreement with Marathon whereby our stock level will be maintained at its current level so that we can continue to supply until their product becomes fully available in market in the US. Beyond the US, they do have intentions, and this will not affect yourselves in the US, but they do have intentions to register the product in Japan and also Israel. And I understand that they've got further intentions to do more study work. But really the intention of this slide was to give you an overview of the work that we've undertaken to some extent hand over the work that we've been doing. As you'll appreciate, this is a very unique situation. Typically products go from being unlicensed and unavailable to being available, but in this case, as a consequence of the personal importation plan, we've actually got a group of patients who are already on medication. And as I say, the purpose of sharing information with Marathon is to ensure that the transition from our service to their service is as smooth and effective as it can possibly be.
Just to reiterate on that, this is an unusual situation. Normally, companies in the U.S., when they intend to register a product, do not engage with anybody, and then the next day, there's a U.S. product, and whoever was supplying before has to be cut off. In this case, because of the sensitivity of this nature, the nature of this disease, the problems that people will suffer, and everything else that goes on with it, in this instance, Marathon and us, we have worked diligently for the last 6 months now, 5-6 months, and beyond into next year, to see a very, very smooth transition. And we'll take your questions now.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you, Dolph and Heather. We so appreciate this explanation, and we're really grateful to both you and Marathon for really trying to make sure that the process of transition is quite smooth. And just to clarify for those on the phone, when they talk about their beginnings with Masters and the HIV community in providing access, the named patient access is a term that's used in Europe, and is a very similar term to to compassionate use or individual IND on the U.S. side. That is providing a medicine to an individual person. So with that, we're going to open it up for questions. And Kathy, why don't you start off with questions? And this is just a back and forth dialogue with you, Heather, and you, Dolph, to talk about sort of some of the details in the transition process. Kathy?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. And also the people that are on the line, if you have questions that you want to ask, if you can type them into the chat box, we'll be happy to discuss those as well. So just to start off, I just wanted to talk a little bit about where your deflazacort has come from. Maybe in comparison, we know where the Marathon deflazacort is being manufactured, but maybe just a little bit about where the Marathon deflazacort has come from historically in the world.
The Marathon?
No, I think the Marathon was upstate Rochester, New York, the university in upstate Rochester, New York, and they developed the Marathon deflazacort with the chemistry and the control and the manufacturing, and then they passed that information of the dossier on to Marathon, who then took it on to the clinicals. Our deflazacort, the one that you buy from Masters, actually comes from a company called Sandoz, which is an offshoot of Novartis, which is a huge Swiss company, and that product is manufactured in Spain, as far as I know, and it comes from Spain to us under the Sandoz label, and then from there we then look after the individual patients.
Perfect. Thanks so much. So we know that you can obtain now, is it 3 months of deflazacort that you can get at one time?
Yes, you can get 3 months. That is what the personal importation rule says, that each patient can receive up to 90 days of treatment.
Okay, and how often can you order that 90 days? Like if somebody thought, well, maybe I wanted to sort of build up a supply of deflazacort before this transition happens, is there a way to do that, or can that supply only be accessed every 90 days as well?
Well,
every 90 days.
Okay, technically speaking, and that's a very good question actually. Technically speaking, it is every 90 days. Otherwise, you would be breaking the rules if it comes in often enough.
Yeah,
okay, go ahead.
We keep very strict records here, so we have a full track of when a patient was most recently supplied and when they will next be due for supply. So it is only by exception that we can supply more than 3 months worth of medication, and typically by exception would mean something along the lines of a patient travelling and maybe being away from the US for a while and needing extra medication to cover that eventuality. But we have some, we have checks and balances here to ensure that we don't oversupply, because the guidance is 3 months and no more.
Okay, so no thoughts about trying to send in a prescription and then 10 days later sending in another prescription. That's not going to work, right?
I'm afraid not, no.
Oh, but, okay.
Well, yeah, the FDA will not be very happy with that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we don't want to make anybody unhappy, that's for sure.
No. No, and I suppose the FDA will have an awareness of this, and no doubt from that they will be potentially more vigilant, because I guess it's an expectation that people might try to accumulate medication.
Right. Also, in terms of access, so we know that this, according to Marathon, this drug's not going to be available at your local pharmacy, so it won't be available at Walgreens and CVS and Walmart and these other places. So when the specialty pharmacies get up to supply, then I guess that's when they will tell you that they're ready, or that everyone has access, or how do you know? Who lets you know that everyone will have access? And do you get a warning time, or do you just get an email the night before that says that's it, tomorrow's cut off?
Okay, no. Once the registration happens, and let's assume it happens on the 28th of February, okay? That's just for an argument. It usually takes about 3 months to gear up with stocks and distribution and logistics of their product to get into the pharmacies. So then we're looking at between February and 3 months, about May time, they should have sufficient stock in every pharmacy in the whole nation. However, we have also been told, or rather we have been discussing with Marathon, and Marathon has agreed that we should carry buffer stocks to last up until the third quarter of next year, maybe August, September of next year. But at some point they'll say to us, okay, now you can stop delivering products to the U.S. and whatever you have in the warehouse, we will buy that off you if necessary, just so to give out as charity, whatever it is. But they will ensure that we've got enough stock to continue supplying until every single pharmacy has got their product in.
We're working very closely with them, so I'm sure as soon as they've got confirmation that the new drug application has been approved, they will let us know that, and then from that we'll have a firmer idea of the production schedule and the production lead time.
Okay, and it sounds like families should not be worried that at any point that they would be cut off from supply, or that their child or themselves would be without drugs.
Not at all. No, that is the one thing we have absolutely ensured.
Okay, thanks. That's really helpful, and we certainly appreciate everything that you're doing with Marathon to make sure that our families are covered and that all of their needs are met. I know that we have a number of questions about the Marathon Deflazacort, and I know that you have no information about the taste of the liquid Deflazacort or about the price point of this Deflazacort, so we won't be able to ask you all any questions along those lines, and we won't expect you to be able to answer any of those questions along those lines. So with that, it sounds like there's a question about, and I think there's a question about buffer stock, and that means that there will be enough overlap, so patients will be able to get medication to shift.
Yeah. There's this question on there about exact chemistry to the Sandoz product. It will be more or less exact chemistry. The Sandoz product is produced according to European pharmacopoeia, and the Marathon product will be produced according to U.S. pharmacopoeia, but there's very little difference between the two. And when they were doing the development, when Rochester was doing the development, they used the European Deflazacort to build up their dossiers.
Thanks, that's really helpful. I don't suppose you have any information about the taste of the liquid?
No.
I'm afraid we don't, but I'm more than happy to take that question back to Marathon. That's not a problem at all.
Okay, and we've taken that question to Marathon as well, because we've had that complaint from families too. So they're aware that that's an issue.
Okay.
Excellent. So I think that we've answered all the questions.
Matthew Chambers is asking whether we are precluded from ordering from us after February. No, you continue ordering from us until Marathon tells us to stop shipping.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
so it's Pat again, and so I guess what I wonder is the timing of that. We talked about the fact that.
Can you just speak up a little bit? You're breaking up a little bit.
Oh, sorry, I'm not sure why, but okay, thanks. So I know we talked about the fact that you will be able to continue to supply the Deflazacort to families until such a time then Marathon's program as taking over, which means translates into Marathon's Deflazacort being available, or Emflaza being available in all the specialty pharmacies. And until that time, patients and families will be able to order from you. So one of the questions that Kathy brought up, and I'm going to just re-ask it to clarify, is in terms of timing, will you get a notice from Amerithon that will say, you know, we anticipate that in X period of time from this date, we will have the U.S. covered in terms of the availability of Marathon or the Marathon product, so that you can say to families that, you know, on a particular day, you've received notice from Marathon that this is in process and that they anticipate full coverage of the U.S. by a certain amount of time. I guess I'm just asking, will you get a warning or will it
absolutely, be? Yes, absolutely. In fact, we will encourage that. We will encourage that so that they can let us know, at least give us between 30 to 60 days so that we will write to the families 30 to 60 days prior to us having to stop. So say if that notice came to us saying the end of May or in the beginning of June of next year, we will write to the families and say we've got 60 days now to continue shipping, and then after that we are precluded from shipping anymore. So at least there'll be a lot of notice period given to families, and we will encourage Marathon to keep that sort of information or give that information to us.
Right, and some of the families have mentioned, Zolf, that they did not receive a letter. So maybe, and so one of my questions is could we post a general letter from you to families that for whatever reason did not receive a letter, so that this could be widely shared on social media?
Okay, we did, where we got email addresses, we sent the letters to the family's email address, and where we hadn't got that, we sent it to home addresses. So I'm a little concerned to hear that some of the families didn't receive letters.
Maybe new families.
Yeah. Well, Heather, would it be good if those families contacted you?
Yeah, please. If they would contact us, then we'll make sure that they get the necessary communication. I'm not sure that we would be keen for a letter to be posted on social media. I would think we would prefer to actually send the letter directly to the families that are without a letter at the moment. So if we could use your services, perhaps, to provide that information to us, and we will get copies of the letters to those families. Sure. We did mail by email and by post. It was close to 1,000 patients in total. So it was quite an undertaking from our side to do.
Yes.
But we'll happily provide that information again. That's not a problem.
Okay, thank you, Heather, and we'll ask that the families contact you directly. I was a bit unsure if you could post a letter like that. That's why I asked the question. And some of the questions that have come in about the chemistry of the Marathon's product versus the chemistry of this, I think what we can assure you in our interactions with Marathon is that the product that they've developed in Plaza is the Plascord. It's under GMP. It follows all of the guidelines of FDA requires. FDA has certainly confirmed that it is what it is, and they've done many studies. I think they're up to 17 or 18 studies around the product to make sure that it is, in fact, the Plascord, that it does what the data suggests that it does. And so the safety of the product is certainly met the rigorous FDA guidelines. So I think we can say that to you. We can't comment on taste, as Kathy and everyone said, because A, we haven't tasted it, but also this is really a question for Marathon.
I think there's a question about will Marathon be the only U.S. supplier, and at this time Marathon is the only company that's applying for FDA approval of this product, so they will be the only supplier in the U.S. once if this is approved.
That is correct.
Keep in mind the regulatory process. So Marathon is hopefully going to see approval. We expect approval in February, as discussed. They have 7 years of market exclusivity. This is a rare disease drug, and it follows the rare disease legislative rules and uses the tools in PDUFA to get this approved in the United States. So yes, they will be the only supplier for the next 7 years, as they have market exclusivity in the United States.
There's a question of whether you would need a new prescription for this medication. I would assume that you would, since this is a new supplier. So I would with your providers at that time and make sure that you obtain a prescription for this medication when and if it is approved, so that you can obtain supply.
I think the good news. Right. The good news about that is that, you know, as you, Zolf, and Heather know, that there were some physicians in the U.S. reluctant to prescribe deflazacort because they were worried about access, and certainly because it was not approved in the U.S. So I think this opens the market to for access to all families who are interested in their physicians. So I think this is also for those of you who have physicians that took that position. You might, and perhaps if they're not in the extended access program of Marathon, you might want to begin educating them about this a really important development in the United States.
Right. That is correct.
There are questions around the price control structure and what Marathon's track record of pricing are. We have been in extensive conversations with Marathon around pricing. We're not aware of what the pricing structure will be, but we've worked very closely with them. They are planning to work very closely with families so that the price out of pocket for this drug is minimal or none. But again, we don't have specific pricing information that we can share at this time.
And we also have a comment that if there's a letter or communication, many of the clinics would be happy to make certain their patients in their clinics did receive a copy. So I guess that opens up a question, and then you may have to go back and discuss this, Heather and Zolf. Could you deliver a letter to clinics providing some information around the transition plan from Masters to Marathon, and encourage them about what they needed to know around providing access to their patients?
I think when the product gets registration, at that point we are able to provide a leaflet. Either we or Marathon will provide the leaflet to be available in the clinics to tell them about what's happening. But before that, nobody's allowed to actually mention the product by name or what it's supposed to be doing, because that's not legal.
Yes, well, we always run into the worries around promotion and access, and that fine line between educating families about what's coming and what may be soon available to them, and obviously following the FDA and the SEC's restrictions around what to say and when. So we thank you for that.
I think we've answered all the questions. Pat, did you have anything else that you wanted to add or ask?
No, I think, Zolf and Heather, we're really thankful that you're continuing your interest, and Zolf, you've been such a champion for Duchenne, so don't go away far. We'll hopefully be back.
No, I sincerely hope that everything and between the relationship between us continues forever and a day. And we'll be beyond deflazacort. There'll be other products that are also much more better than deflazacort in the future. We don't know. There's a lot of work going on in this area, and we will be part of this as long as we are here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been terrific. If those of you on the phone have additional questions, please send them forward to us, and we'll go back to Zolf and Heather and get the answers for you and post those online. Keep in mind the webinar will be posted and archived on our website, and you can download it at your convenience. Thank you all for joining us this morning, and thank you, Zolf and Heather, one more time, and we hope to see you in the near future.
Thank you very much, Pat. Thank you. Thank you very much for facilitating.
Thank you so much.
It's been our pleasure. Thank you.
Goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.